Okay, so this is Jing again from Bukit Vista, and I'm starting new intern orientation today with Faris. And one of the first things we're going to take a look at is the all hands paper. How you doing, Faris?
Yes, fine, great. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm Faris. Hello.
Hey, all right. So hopefully what we'll do through the course of this video is to bring you through the orientation of how the company is set up so that you can swim freely through the ecosystem. It should be we've designed this system to allow for innovation and to allow for easy collaboration. So what does that mean? I think as a company, we want to create a workplace where the foundations for innovation are strong. What does that mean exactly? So I think in order to have strong foundations for innovation, you have to think about, all right, where are ideas going to come from and where are ideas going to grow? It's a little bit like a garden. So if you have a good garden, then you should have a lot of ideas growing in the garden. If you don't have a good garden, then the ideas will die. So what we're trying to do here through the orientation is to explain a little bit about how this, as an analogy, how this garden works and where you can find the best place to express your ideas and grow your ideas, and by doing so, help the company become more innovative and drive our mission to become the most innovative hospitality company in the world. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and begin. So the overview here is that the company right now is broken into chapters. So what's a chapter? Well, a chapter is kind of like a department in other companies. I'm not sure how much of this was covered already by Ara in new employee orientation. Have you seen the Spotify video about
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so some of the vocabulary that I'm using here should be familiar then. Yeah, Barrett?
Yeah.
Okay.
About the tribe.
Wow, excellent. Very fast learner. So we have different chapters right now. Currently, we don't have squads anymore. I'll explain a little bit why we decided not to have squads anymore. But actually, the idea of a squad could be coming back soon. But okay, anyhow, let me just arrange around the chapters first. So we have different chapters, and each chapter has a different mission. And from that, each mission is supported by initiatives. And then each initiatives are supported by pivots. So pivots support initiatives, initiatives support missions on chapter level, and the chapter level mission supports the company mission. Okay, I know that's a little bit abstract at this point, so let me break it down. All right, we have a mission of transforming the world with inspiring delight and of becoming the world's most innovative hospitality company. And part of that is, all right, so that's great. How are you going to actually do that, right? What's the actual process? So what we thought of was, okay, so how do you actually, well, let's actually go over here. I'm going to create a little discussion page on your journal, and this is called the research discussion, or actually this is the research topic, and this is the discussion. Okay, so the first part is, I guess, about this, right? How does a vision help us as employees in a company? So we have a vision. We have this idea. We want to be the most innovative company in the world. So Faris, over to you. How does that actually help you with your work here in this company?
Maybe the vision of company, it has to align with the vision of myself or the vision of every chapter. So when I'm doing my work or doing a chapter doing their work, it should be aligned with the company vision. So it helps each other go somewhere else. I learned a bit about this topic in my college.
Really? Okay, very good. So
The vision and then a mission, and then I read about Bukit Vista use OKR, but I know it as a key performance indicator.
Okay.
Maybe it's the same thing.
Oh, excellent. Okay, that's actually opened up a new discussion. So we can document that, and that's a great discussion. What is the difference between OKR and KPIs? Just for reference, you went to the School of Management and Business. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so these things are actually very, how would I say, they're very common and useful business tools for leadership. Okay, so you're absolutely right. Congratulations. Your first question answered 10%. Don't worry about, okay, here. I'm going to ask another question later. Is that, okay. We'll get to this question later. All right, very good. I would say you're absolutely correct, so I'll agree with you. And the practical way of thinking about it is this. So at Bukit Vista, you won't have necessarily a manager, meaning that we don't believe that, let's say, good ideas should come from the top down. We believe that it should kind of grow like from the bottom up, or it should grow from grassroots. So what does that look like exactly? It looks more like at Bukit Vista. You might find it a little bit weird because you could be here for a while, and you might find like nobody's actually telling me what I need to do exactly, right? And the reason for that is because it's maybe for certain people that's more if you're like doing operational work. But we want people to like, let's say like who are like, let's say, graduate students. I don't think your school would tell you, all right, you need to do this as part of your graduate research topic. You would choose your own research topic, and then you would go and you would find your own way. And I think that's actually one of the key things about innovation, that the people working closest to the material, they should know more about the subject than anybody else. So what that presumes is actually a few things. What that presumes is you will eventually be smarter than anybody else about your particular subject matter. That's the whole essence of research. But also you have to be self-driven, right? You'll operate autonomously in a way. So then it becomes really important to make sure, if you're operating autonomously, are you aligned, or are you working on something that does not have really any relevancy to where the company is going? And so this is actually just a thought process to enable a thought process. So let's say question, should I do A or B, right? When should I begin? What should I talk to? Where do I find? These questions are all really good questions, right? And they are part of the thought process as you begin something. The vision is just to help you align that thought process. Let's say between decision. Should you do A or B? Well, then ask yourself, does A or B help us become more innovative as a company? And that really guides the thought process. Maybe we can do something A, but it doesn't help with innovation. It's just something that's common. Or maybe we can do B, and maybe it's a little bit longer, but it's more innovative. Well, you kind of have your answer just by comparing that with the vision. When should you begin? Okay, you can begin at this time, or you can begin at another time. But what actually supports the mission of inspiring delight, right? Will it be more delightful for other people if you begin now or later? Will you help with innovation more if you begin now or later? So these are sort of just the vision sets, I said, guidelines for a thought process. And that allows you to be more autonomous. And it also allows, I think, a certain thing to happen. There's less hierarchical thinking. Sorry, I can't spell. Maybe there's less hierarchical thinking and more merit-based thinking. It doesn't matter if somebody's been here for 5 years or 2 years or whatever, or 5 days. So it should just be, does the idea fit better with the vision? And if it does, then it's a good idea, no matter who came up with it. So that part is pretty interesting. We definitely want to have an idea meritocracy here. Meritocracy. Okay, and that idea of how do we have an idea meritocracy and why is that important? That leads to a whole bigger discussion. So let's go and ask Faraz, why is it important to have an idea meritocracy?
Sorry, but I don't get it with the term of meritocracy.
Sure. A meritocracy, sir, is an idea of, okay, you can have many ways of organizing a group of people. You can have a meritocracy, which is this idea of leadership should be around the best performance, right? Merit. Like if you get an A, if you get, let's say, A's in college, then you would have the most recognition. And let's say we took that to work, right? Let's say you got A plus at work, then you would get the most pay and you would be the leader of the company, right? That would be, let's say, a meritocracy. So an aristocracy, that would be, let's say, a government by aristocrats. So people who are already rich and powerful would continue to be rich and powerful. Let's say if you had a bureaucracy is just offices, right? So you have many different offices to go to for different needs, and that's a bureaucracy. So a meritocracy is essentially this idea that best ideas should win, no matter who comes up with it, right? So if you have a great idea, it doesn't matter if you are, like I said, if you're 5 days in the company or 5 years in the company, the best idea should always win. Okay? All right. So why is that important for our company, ours?
Because every company need a fresh idea, no matter from who they are. It can be from the intern, it can be from the full-time employee. But the most important is the idea is great, and maybe it can help the company grow better. At this point of the meritocracy is great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, why is this important? Because everyone can share the idea. From the previous video that you showed me, everyone can share their achievement, share their great things. Yeah, I think it's more than idea. It's a great things.
Okay, sharing is great. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, very good. So let's see. Once again, you're doing really good. That answer is absolutely correct. So every company does need fresh ideas, and fresh ideas drive innovation. If we don't get new ideas, we can't innovate. If we don't believe that new ideas are any good, then we can't innovate. So the whole process of innovation relies a lot on being curious and coming up with new ideas, right? Okay, that actually drives a new question. So how do we develop ideas into actions? Okay, so we can talk about that a little bit later. All right, great. So we answered the why question now, and let's answer the how question. How do we actually create an idea meritocracy?
Brainstorming maybe
Okay.
the most important, because so the schedule on Google Calendar every day, every chapter Scrum, maybe brainstorming starting the day.
Okay.
Brainstorming generate an idea from one person to one person, and then maybe conclude to it make conclusion with what is the best idea from the references of the other team member.
Okay, great. So you're generating ideas from one person to another person and using one person's reference to inspire others. Okay, great answer. Okay, let me actually bring this question over. This question is pretty interesting. And okay, so let me jump to this question first so that you'll understand what we're doing. Faris, what is the Socratic method?
Oh, sorry, Socratic. It's like a Greek name.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't know the term of Socratic.
Okay. I'll tell you a story about the Socratic method. Okay. So once upon a time, I went to visit a friend at Harvard Business School. It's one of the leading business schools in the world. I'm sure you'll appreciate that. So I go to Harvard Business School for a conference, and I arrive one day before the conference to just explore the school with my friend. So he brings me to this class, and the classroom is set up really interesting. So at Harvard Business, I'll show you what it looks like. The classrooms are very different from normal classrooms. So how are they different? The classrooms are actually organized like this. They're organized like an amphitheater. So if you are the lecturer, this is what you see as the lecturer, right? So you see just rings of students in this configuration. If you're a student, this is what you see. So everybody has a name card in front of them, right? So that the lecturer or anybody else in the room knows who everybody's name is. And it's arranged in this circle. Good question. Why do you think they create a classroom using this shape, Faris?
It's more, I think, like wait. It's unusual class, okay? It's more engagement, I think. The one and each other can see clearly who they are.
Exactly.
Yeah, because with normal class, if we sit in the front, we don't know who is in the behind.
Very good. Very good. All right, you got it. So exactly. So the story is like this then. I'll continue the story. What I saw was pretty amazing. Normally, when a lecturer or a professor begins a class, they have like a notebook, and they simply, that's not a notebook. I don't have a notebook here, but they have a notebook, and then they copy the notes from the notebook onto the board, onto the blackboard, onto the chalkboard. So they copy the notes, everybody sits there, and they just listen, and they write down the notes into their own book, right? That's like kind of the traditional way of teaching. What I saw at Harvard was that they used the Socratic method. So how does that work? The night before the class, everybody reads a case study. So they will read essentially a certain case about something that's happened in the business world. So then the professor will then choose one person. He'll say, Mitchell, give me a summary of what you understand from the reading of last night. And then he'll ask a few questions, right? He'll ask, essentially, what do you think were the main ideas? What was the main conflict? And what are the resolutions to this conflict? So then Mitchell will begin talking, and everybody in the classroom will start listening to Mitchell. The professor will then go to another person, like Shelley, and say, Shelley, of what Mitchell said previously, how much of that do you agree with, and how much of it can be seen differently if you're taking the position of this party? And then Shelley will start talking. And then what the professor will do is he will construct the entire lesson. The entire lesson will be constructed from what people are talking about. So it's actually watching the lesson be produced by the audience, which is really amazing, I thought. It was essentially the reverse of a normal classroom. Normal classroom, the professor is spreading knowledge. This format, the professor is just facilitating knowledge to happen and actually getting knowledge to be created at the single time. So for me, this was a beautiful performance, in fact. It was like watching jazz. No two classes will ever be the same because no two discussions will ever be the same. But also more importantly, the professor will always learn something from the students as well, because this way, it's not just the knowledge flow is one direction. The knowledge flow is every direction. And so when I saw that, I realized in order to have an innovative company, you need to use Socratic method. If you don't use Socratic method, you will start sounding like professors that need to retire because the lessons that they're talking about are so outdated. But if you use Socratic method, then you will always remain up to date because people will always see something new out of it. So then there's only two things. There's only a moderator and an audience. And the role changes now. So the moderator's job is to extract information and knowledge and extract understanding from the audience and not necessarily teach so much, right? So right now we're practicing, if you've noticed, Socratic method, right? I'm asking you questions and I'm learning what you know as well. Okay, all right, but at some point you'll know more than me. So and at some point maybe if you remain in this company, a new intern will know more than you. So you're going to have to use the Socratic method as a way of really being able to keep your knowledge and your understanding most up to date. Okay, so that's the Socratic method, and that's why we use it. Use this method to remain innovative, and it extracts knowledge and understanding from your audience. Okay, all right, great. Okay, so I just wanted to jump into that question real quick. We'll jump back to the how do we have an idea meritocracy. From a leadership perspective, actually, an idea meritocracy is based on this. It's based on core values. That's why we have core values. That's one of the fundamental reasons why we have core values. We have core values because we want Bukit Vista to be an innovative company. And we want Bukit Vista to be relatable in the hospitality industry. So we have core values to actually promote idea meritocracy. Now here's a test. Which core values support an idea meritocracy, Faris?
Which idea?
Which one of the Bukit Vista core values supports an idea meritocracy?
From what I saw yesterday, the daily sign up is one of the method of the drive meritocracy idea, and the core value is from each member. Each member has a different value, and it can be a great value if we have nice framework.
Okay.
With brainstorming.
Got it. Okay. Let's go back to this question. Do you know what the Bukit Vista core values are?
Okay, the value is to serve best hospitality service to the customer.
Okay, best service to the customer.
Best hospitality service.
Okay, all right, that's not accurate actually. So I'll tell you why. The best service to the customer is more like a mission. It's more like a mission because that's what we aim to do every day. But the values are how we're going to do that. And what is guiding our thought process to actually create that? We have values here, and I'll show you what the values are. You can just type it up, Bukit Vista core values. It's already on Google. Okay, so core values are essentially this. They're essentially a set of metrics. They're a set of anchors. They're a set of anchors so that, once again, they're guidelines for how to make decisions. Right? So the idea is that if you have core values to a company are not the same. They're not the same as individual values. Like you might have individual values for your family, individual values for your friends, but core values here in a company are shared values, actually. They're values that all the employees and management and leadership should have. Core values allow for autonomous decision making. If you need to make a decision, do I do A or B? Then you have a vision that aligns what you should do. And then how you should do it is more aligned to like the value, right? So I'll give you a few examples of values that actually support an idea meritocracy. So one of the values is this: it's really hard sometimes to get your idea heard, meaning that there's always going to be a climate of bias, right? You're the new guy, or hey, you don't have as much experience about this, or you can't see this as clearly. So what you need to do is you need to step on toes. You need to know that the best ideas rule is not the title or position, and anybody can speak without the fear of reprisal. So that's step on toes. We have step on toes mainly so that we've seen this work. For example, what have I seen step on toes? I'll give you an example that I saw just yesterday. In fact, this was with Diba. You witnessed this yourself, actually. So Diba had a new idea about how she wanted to lay out the Trello cards, right? And this was based on a discussion that Diba, me, and Rizal had. So as you can see, the new idea can create some confusion, and it can create some conflict, and it can make, especially if it's your first day, it's like, what? There's two different systems here. What's going on? But what I think Diba did as a very good example is that she was willing to step on toes. So she was willing to say, all right, you know what, Jing, the system that you made was good, but I think I have a better idea and I want to test it out. And it's okay, right? That part is okay. I will offer my feedback about why I think what works and what doesn't. But you can see Diba insisted, right? She said, no, I think this is actually a good idea. This fits to what our mission is, and she continued that. So that's stepping on toes. And that's good, because eventually I said, right, you know what? Let's move to the second core value. Let's stop assuming, but use data to help us make our decision. So if Diba and I just go and debate about whether we should organize the cards according to a list of name or a list according to mission, we could debate about that all day long, right? There's no end to that. But why don't we just say, all right, let's just do it the new way? Is there any harm? Maybe a little bit of confusion, but we have smart people here, so we figure that they can learn. But let's look at the data. Let's take a look and see, is this actually going to work better? Is this going to be more efficient? Does this actually help, organize and align us better? And then we can make a decision after we remember essentially what the old system was like, and then compare it to the new system. So don't assume, use data. That's a way to qualify an idea over time so that we know which idea is working better than others. I think also to add to the idea of meritocracy is be transparent. So if you're not transparent, nobody can actually understand your context. So what is an idea? An idea is a signal. It's like saying, hey, look, there is a possibility that this could happen. But we need to understand also what's your context. What are you trying to solve? What is the background behind this? And the idea of transparency goes to everything. Like, we publish all our meeting videos on YouTube. And why do we do that? Transparency, I think, creates trust. If we don't have transparency, then we will always wonder, what is your context that I don't understand, but that drives your thinking process a certain way? So when we need to decide whether to share or not share a piece of information, I generally am very biased towards sharing first. If there's a reason not to share it, there should be a very good reason not to share. But otherwise, sharing first, it allows, I think, control. It allows you to have control over how people perceive you. When you're not transparent, then rumors start coming around. Oh yeah, this person behaves this way because they have a special relationship, or they have something that I don't know, or because they come from this type of family. But when you're transparent, I think it makes it much more clear what that's about. I'll give you an example of how actually I think we could have been more transparent, and we were misunderstood. We originally had a really strong neighborhood in Bingin here in Bali. So I don't think, I mean, we're trying to be as transparent as possible, but I don't think the community understood what we were trying to do, which was using data and analytics and artificial intelligence to help drive pricing. So somewhere along the way, what happened was, because we were, I guess, afraid to share this technology with our audience, which was the partners, they started listening to other people. They started listening to rumors saying that, oh, Bukit Vista has some mad scientists working here, and they're trying to cut the market short. So that was a result of other people who sort of took over the conversation because we hadn't provided enough transparency around that idea. But anyway, those are just a few of the core values that support the the idea of meritocracy. And I've been through pretty much every one of these. And I think at a future day, we can get together again and just talk about stories around core values. There's quite a lot of really interesting moments in the company where these values are reflected. In fact, if you look at the all hands and you go to them to the very bottom, you'll probably see that over here, there is core value recognition. So these are, if you want to understand what the core values are, these are examples of where somebody has demonstrated a core value. And this is fairly important. Core values become the anchor of culture in a company. So we all want to have good culture in our organization. So when we have core values, then we have essentially, it's like a tent pole. Now the tent, you can stretch into any direction you want. You can, some places are a little bit higher, some places are lower, but you need the anchors and the tent poles to give the shape of the tent. So in that regard, the core values are anchor points. Okay. All right. So that's this discussion a little bit about the core values. And if you need to learn more about the core values, please go to, so there's more information about the core values on this page, and definitely read it and start looking for it too yourself, right? See if you start finding examples of the core value throughout the company. Okay, very cool. So that part is there. All right. Just earlier, you mentioned quite a bit about brainstorming, okay? And then you tied brainstorming to the Scrum, okay, so the daily sync up. Let me actually correct that a little bit. So we actually do not do brainstorming that much in the Scrum. And so let me illustrate the different levels of meetings that we have. Okay. So okay. All right. Each chapter has a specific meeting structure, and I'll illustrate that structure over here. All right. Let's actually go and let's go to you, actually, Faris. If you want to understand more about the meeting structure, where would you go to find that information?
Trello, yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. And then what card on Trello would you go to find more meeting?
The content card.
Okay, let's see. Which card? I mean, there's so many cards.
I don't get it. There's too many things.
Okay, don't worry about here. Look, it's in the management list. So this is where you go to understand about meetings. You can understand about meeting structure right here. So these are the different types of meetings that happen at Bukit Vista. So there's an all hands meeting that we had on Tuesdays, and then there's discussion management within the chapter. There are, I don't know what meeting summary is, actually. That's weird. Oh, okay, I don't think that needs to be there. Okay, so there's a little bit too much information here, but there's discussion management, meeting summaries, and an all hands management, and then there's a content journal, which we will integrate into discussion management. So each of these serves a different purpose. And this part I want to actually illustrate to you. So what are the kinds of meetings that we have, and what purposes do they serve Bukit Vista? Okay, all right. So that's a question, but also what is the mission of how would you break down the mission of a chapter to a more systematic level? Okay, all right, let's ask you this question first. How would you break down the mission of a chapter to a more systematic level where anybody, like a new person, can find a fit right away?
We need to know the goals,
okay,
before we know what to do.
Okay, and then?
Okay. And then we do the action after mission. We have to do the action, maybe with the team.
Okay.
With the main is to we have a goal. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That is not entirely correct. Okay. And I will illustrate why. There's a really this is feedback, right? So we're just having a one-on-one. So don't take it as, oh, Jing's angry at me. It's mostly feedback so that you can evolve your thought process. Okay.
Okay.
So the idea is actually a little bit more like this. You break down a mission by essentially simplifying the process, simplifying the process, and standardizing where there are common stages, right? So by simplifying the process and standardizing where there's common stages, you can make it easier for anybody to actually understand how the process of innovation works, in fact. So here's what we do. You're absolutely right. The first part is you need to know the goal, right? So part of that is this stack. It's called discovery. Okay. What does discovery mean? Discovery is tied to this idea. Are you find the opportunity, also find the problem? That's discovery. That's what brainstorming is about most of the time. It's about are we discovering what we should do? After you have that, there's a very important piece, which is to prioritize. You're probably going to get more ideas than we actually have resources for. So you need to measure your resources. This is where a lot of people fail. A lot of people, they do not measure their resources before they go to a project. They think that, oh my God, yeah, I'll just, I'll invent an app, right? But they don't really calculate what resources do you need to actually create this app. Okay, yeah, there's tools that you can do it, but how much are your resources? And your resources are generally pretty constrained. What are your personal resources, Faris, for doing any project?
Laptop or internet?
Okay, all right. So you have access. Okay, so that's one thing. You need access.
Access. Okay.
Access. What's another resource that you have?
Information.
Very good. Okay, information. Wow, excellent. Okay, what other resources do you have?
From social, I think.
Okay, all right. So maybe you have connections, right?
Connection, yeah.
Okay. What other resources do you have?
Knowledge.
Very good. Okay, knowledge and information I'll put together.
Oh, that's okay.
Very closely related. What other resources do you have?
Mentor.
Okay, that's your connections, right?
Oh, connection, okay.
Okay, what other resources do you have?
Past failure, maybe.
Okay, experience, right? Experience, knowledge too. Yeah, knowledge, information,
Knowledge.
and experience. Okay, all right. What other resources do you have?
Maybe that all.
No, there's more. But thank you for actually telling me these things because I learned something using the Socratic method. I had thought of access as actually, I had not actually thought of access as actually a resource. You have this, Faris, you have time, you have right, your time and energy, and perhaps even budget. These are your resources that you need to prioritize. So if you have, let's say, 1,000 ideas, you need to look what you want to spend on. What do you have access to? What do you have knowledge about? What do you have information? There's also another one that's fairly important, and I'll say that's skill. Skill and maybe craft is not just knowledge, but it's actually the capability to do something. Expertise, maybe. If you're looking to, let's say, if your goal is to become a basketball player, then it would be better if, let's say, you were already a good athlete, right, to do that. So that's your skill and that's your expertise. This part is really important. A lot of people will attempt projects and their projects are doomed. They're doomed from the very beginning because they did not measure their resources. And they get into a vicious cycle. They get into the cycle, they don't measure their resources, and then they stay up all night, and then they get really burnt out. And it was because they simply did not budget their time in the very beginning. They didn't think about, if I do go after this idea, how much time will this actually take? And what I like to say is try to imagine you have resource constraints. I'll give you an example. I've seen two types of contractors work in my life as in construction. I used to work in construction before this. There are contractors who never plan, and then at the very last minute, they always do limbo, they always do overtime, and then they fail the contract, and they don't necessarily get paid what they thought they should get paid because they didn't prioritize their resources. And there are contractors that before they accept a contract, they will negotiate very, very rigorously about how to prioritize correctly. And so at the very end, they're able to finish and they're able to still remain profitable. That was the biggest difference between, I see, as amateur contractors and professional contractors. The professionals will always negotiate for resources at the beginning because they are calculating how much time, how much budget, how much resources they have available before they say yes to a project. If you say yes to a project and you don't do that, you end up destroying yourself, right? And that's been a hard lesson for us too as well. I think in the past we lost good people here at the company, mainly because they got so frustrated after a while. They're like, I'm spending so much time in the office, but I think the key is actually to, before you start a project, to really invest some time in understanding your resources. What are you going to put into this project? And do you have the right access? Do you have the right mentorship and guidance? Do you have the right skill and expertise? Can you make the connections that you need to do? Can you learn the skills that you want to learn? All very important before we start. Okay? So this is the second part and very important part of innovation. Next is problem solving. Problem solving is essentially finding a solution and improving the solution. Okay, so we need to find, okay, we know what the problem is, we know what the opportunity is, we've decided to go after it, we have the right resources to go after it, but then it's about what is the solution, right? And then is there a solution that we can use that reduces our need to put more resources into it, right? That could be actually a quick iteration right here. You can look at a solution and then ask yourself, does this consume more resources or less resources? So there's a cycle there in solution optimization. So thinking about how to solve a problem and then doing it. Okay? All right. And then the very last step is actually execution. Execution means bringing the solution to life. It could involve more solution optimization, or as we call solution pivots. A pivot means your first solution doesn't work, so you need to come up with a new idea now. And you come up with maybe a new idea if that doesn't work. And you keep on pivoting. You keep on moving from solution to solution until it finally works. And that's essentially the stack. Okay? So that is the entire process of how you would take the mission of the chapter, which is to innovate and come up with solutions to acquire properties anywhere in the world in the case of marketing. And that's how we systematize that process. Okay, so then let's connect it back up to the top again. How does any of that relate to meetings and our communication structure? So here is essentially the answer for that. Oh, Vidi, welcome in.
Hi, sir.
Good morning. Vidi, did we have a meeting today, 10 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. Faris, you're welcome to hang along for this meeting. So at this point, what you can do is, let me introduce Vidi. This is Faris. Faris, this is Vidi. Faris is our...
Nice to meet you.
And Vidi's been working with Bukit Vista. Actually, Vidi began as an intern as well a few months back. And now he's working at Bukit Vista as data scientist, and he's working on our revenue management chapter to optimize revenue for the company, come up with some AI-driven forecasting models. And yeah, Vidi's a really smart, really pleasant person to work with, and true pleasure to have him here. Vidi, so what I've been doing with Faris is that we've been going through and giving him a new employee orientation. And actually, I'll end the orientation at this point right now. Faris, so I'll stop the recording for this, and